Peace and blessings to the 12 tribes of Israel. Today I'm going to deal with a Bible share called What is Ruddy? This is a fair use video. The comments related to this video are solely alleged and are of an opinion. What is Ruddy? Now, a lot of Christians, a lot of Israelites, a lot of people in general, they get confused with Ruddy, and there's this big debate saying Ruddy means red, and and they say things like, oh, it just means Ruddy just means that he was like a white man, he was red, right? Now, Ruddy doesn't really mean red. It doesn't necessarily mean like he was pale or red, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that, right? It means something else. So Ruddy is known in Christianity as red, right? Now, a lot of Christians say things that are not always substantiated in the Bible, right? And what a lot of these apologetics, what they say is that King David was ruddy, just like a lot of the prophets in the Bible are ruddy, and that just means red, meaning white, right? And what they normally say is that us black people, right, that have been through slavery and colonialism, we're just cursed as Ham, right? Because the Bible doesn't really talk that much about Ham, right? I mean, obviously it talks about, the Cushites, etc., which are Hamites, right? But it doesn't necessarily talk about Ham. So Noah's son Ham had 4 sons. So he had Canaan, he had Put, Mazrin, and Cush, right? So the Cushites are the ancient Ethiopians and Somalians. Then you got the Mazrim, which are the ancient Egyptians, right? Which would be the South Sudanese today. And then you've got Put and the Canaanites, which are the ancient Africans, right? So these are Nilotic, right? They're not Shemitic because they come from Noah's son Ham, right? So these are the Hamites. Now we, on the other hand, those blacks that went through the transatlantic slavery, your typical African Americans, your Afro-Caribbeans, your Afro-Brazilian and South American, just Negroes scattered around the world, right? We tend to be Shemitic or Bantu, right? So there is a difference. So you've got the Hamite black, and then you've got the Shemite black, right? Now, let's deal with this preacher. So this preacher on the screen is called Kenneth Copeland. Now, he's a very, very, very well-loved preacher in black churches. When I was when I was doing my church thing, I mean, he was very well known and very well loved by everybody. The black preachers would always talk about him, and they would always talk about him in warm tones.
Are you gotten in there, that name it, claim it bunch, blab it, grab it? Well, yeah, I named it, claimed it, blabbed it, grabbed it, and I've had it for 40 years. Who was the biggest loser? Satan? No. God.
Now, the pastor here, he seems like he's in a Nigerian church. So he's an African church, and he's speaking to an all-black congregation.
God lost his man. God lost the woman he created with his own hands.
Now, this preacher is very well known in the word of faith, kind of prosperity, Christian ministries. And, people do all sorts of things just to spend time with this dude, right? Now, it's quite interesting that all these black churches love this dude. You know, they think he's second to Christ, right? Because he preaches prosperity and he's all about the money, right? But it's quite interesting that he just couldn't stop it. He just couldn't stop himself from being honest and saying, well, I think all of you lot are the devil. I think you're black and I think you are of the devil. Now let's hear him say it out of his mouth.
He left his place. And instead of being Lucifer, now he is Satan. Lucifer, son of the morning. Now, I didn't get this from the Lord, but just from reading, I'm convinced that he was Jesus' personal angel. And I'll tell you something else. It says his beauty, he was beautiful, and his pride fell. I am totally, completely convinced he's ebony black. I am totally, completely convinced he's ebony black. I am totally, completely convinced he's ebony black. Why? Has the white man, the yellow man, the brown man, anyone been persecuted like the black man? No. Why? Well, the color of the skin. That's what I'm trying to get over to. I'm convinced he was ebony black.
Watch this.
Gorgeous. Have you ever seen ebony, the wood itself and the grain? And he had musical instruments built within him. Everything but the trumpet, that's God's. Phil Driscoll let me know that for sure.
Now, this is very dangerous teaching. Now, we get it. You think that black people are of the devil. You think that we are the same color as the devil. You think that the reason why black people go through so much is because we are the devil. We sing and we are the devil. You know, we sing quite good and we are of the devil. You've just revealed your heart. Now, you're very wrong. In all fairness to you, you did say is what you believed in your heart. You didn't pull out any scriptures to prove it. But however, if that's the way you firmly believe in your heart, that's deeply problematic because the Bible doesn't say such.
Has the white man, the yellow man, the brown man, anyone been persecuted like the black man? No. Why? Well, the color of the skin. That's what I'm trying to get over to. I am totally, completely convinced he's ebony black.
Okay, so that's enough of that. Let's move away from that and let's deal with the topic at hand, which is what is Ruddy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to deal with Ham first. We're just going to deal with a few scriptures on Ham and then we're going to deal with Ruddy. So what apologetics normally say is that the black people that went through slavery, we're just Ham, we're just cursed, and that's it, right? But they're Ruddy, and they are the people of the book, and the Bible does say that Ruddy just means it's them, right? It's their color, right? Now we know as Bible stewards that is rubbish, right? Now, in Christianity, because a lot of us, we came from the church, right? In all of our years in the church, some of us grew up in the church. All we know is that black people were always Ham, right? Everybody else was white in the Bible, right? Without a question, right? But when it came to us, it was, oh, you're just Ham, you're just cursed, and that's it, right? So it's quite interesting that we go from being Ham, being cursed, to now being the devil, Satan himself, right? Now, I find that quite interesting. Now, let's go into the scriptures to have a little bit of fun. So let's read a little bit about Ham. So we are not Ham, right? So those brothers and sisters that went through the slave trade, in colonialism and slavery, transatlantic slavery, those brothers and sisters who fled into Africa and all at the four corners of the earth, right? We're always the minority in most nations, in most countries, right? Or if we are the majority, there's always problems. We always has to depend on the nations for our sustenance. Now this is a curse that the Most High put on his people, but we did have kingdoms, and that curse is not forever, right? Now let's go through Ham. So let's deal with a little bit with Ham. So let's go to Genesis 9, and we're going to go to 20 to 27. So let's read from 18 actually. And the sons of Noah that went forth of the ark were Shem and Ham and Japheth, and Ham is the father of Canaan. These are the three sons of Noah, and of them was the whole earth overspread. And Noah began to be a husbandman, and he planted a vineyard, and he drank of the wine and was drunken, and he was uncovered within his tent. Right? So Noah got drunk, right? And he was uncovered. He was naked in his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, right, the Canaanites, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brethren without, the two brethren that were outside. And Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it upon both their shoulders and went backward and covered the nakedness of their father. So I suppose they did not want to see the nakedness of their father. And their faces were backward, and they saw not their father's nakedness. So they didn't see his nakedness. And Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done unto him. Right, because Ham saw his nakedness. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. Now, for those of you that understand the Bible, if the father cursed the child, or the father announced blessings on that child, that is normally what that child becomes, right? So that's why it's very important to know what to say to your children when they're young, right? So it says, let's read a bit again. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. So Canaan was, I believe it was the son of Ham. So the curse was, he be a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren, right? So he is not going to not be a servant. And he said, Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. Right, so of Shem, Canaan, which is the son of Ham, shall be his servant. And God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. So every which way, Noah is pronouncing a curse on Ham. And Ham is relegated to being a servant, right? So ultimately his purpose is to be a servant of servants, especially his son, which is Canaan, right? Now let's now go to, now there's a difference between Israel and the Hamites, the Israelites and the Hamites, because Israel was not cursed to be a servant of servants, right, or to serve Shem, right? We were blessed by our forefather Isaac to rule over the whole planet Earth. So let's go to Deuteronomy 7:6. So this is ultimately our blessing as a nation. So we're in Deuteronomy 7:6. For thou art a holy people unto the Lord thy God. The Lord thy God had chosen thee to be a special people unto himself above all the people that are upon the face of the earth. So that was the pronouncement that was given to us. So throughout the Bible, this is the pronouncement. So whatever we're going through now, whatever curses you think we're going through now as a nation, it is not forever, because ultimately our goal is to be, read it again, for thou art a holy people, so we are holy and righteous unto the Lord thy God. The Lord thy God had chosen thee. So the Lord out of all the 18, roughly 18 nations, we were chosen to be. The Lord thy God Thy God had chosen thee to be a special people unto himself, for himself, above all the people that are upon the face of the earth. So this is the promise that was given to us, regardless of any curses in the Bible. Now, I think it's quite interesting to give the difference between Ham and Israel, but it's also let's explain, or at least let's find the children of Ham. So let's go to 1 Chronicles 1:8. The sons of Ham are Cush, so that's the Cushites, and Mazrin, which are the Egyptians. The Cushites are the Ethiopians. Put and the Canaanites, right? So those are both African, original Africans, basically, right? The ancient Africans, right? Now, Ham normally are people of stature, right? So they are people that have height, right? Normally they have height, and a lot of them, their complexion tends to be quite black, right? Significantly darker than the average Israelite, right? So they tend to be taller and blacker, right? Now, not all of them, but that's normally how they look, right? Now, not all of them are the same complexion, of course. Some of them are the same complexion as us, right? They look similar to us in that respect. But a lot of them tend to look blacker and tall. And one of their characteristics is their height, right? They tend to be slim and tall. Now, let's go to Exodus 11:7, because the Lord said he put a difference between Ham and Israel, the Egyptians and the Israelites. And as you know, the Israelites were in slavery in Egypt for 430 years, right? So there was a difference that the Lord put between both nations, right? So let's now go to Exodus 11:7. Exodus 11:7. But against any of the children of Israel shall not a dog move his tongue, against man or beast, that ye may know how that the Lord doeth put a difference between the Egyptians and Israel. So there's a difference between the Egyptians, which are Hamites, right? They're the Mazrin, and Israel. So it says, but against any of the children of Israel shall not a dog move his tongue. So he's talking about the nations, right? He's talking about the nations, the other nations. Against man or beast, that ye may know how that the Lord doeth put a difference between the Egyptians and Israel, between Ham and Israel. So there's a difference. We are not the same. We are not the same people, right? So in the Bible, normally the Egyptians is called Mazrim, the Libyans are called Put, the Ethiopians are called Cushites, also are the Sabines, which are the Somalians, which I believe is the Cushite. Cush had a son called Saba. So the Sabines are the Somalians, which are Cushites. So they're Cushites, right? And the Canaanites, of course, right? So let's now go to another scripture. So there's a difference between Israel and Ham. Israelites are Shemite and Egyptians are Hamite, right? So let's now go to Isaiah 45:14. So let's go to Isaiah 45:14. So this was a time during the Persian and Medes captivity, and the Lord was pronouncing a prophecy against Persian and Medes and what they were going to do to Israel, etc., etc. Right now, part of this prophecy was that the Persian and Medes were to conquer the Egyptians, the Ethiopians, and the Sabines. Right. So let's read Isaiah 45:14. Thus said the Lord, the labor of Egypt and the merchandise of Ethiopia and the Sabines, men of stature. Now what we want to get from that is men of stature. So the Lord is actually saying to you that they are normally tall. Their height is their difference, is one of the differences between Israel and the Hamites. So it says Ethiopia and the Sabines, they're Cushites, but I suppose they can be offshot into two different nations. Men of stature shall come over thee, and they shall be thine. They shall come over thee. In chains they shall come over. They shall fall down unto thee. They shall make supplication unto thee, saying, surely God is in thee, and there is none else. There is no God. So whatever these nations are going to do that's going to affect Israel, what would affect Israel, the Lord is going to block it. The Lord is going to block it. And thereby, the Persians and the Medes, they broke those three nations. They broke them down. So that is Ham. So I find it interesting that we go from being Ham to now this preacher is saying that we are now the devil because we are black and we are cursed. Let's now get to the scriptures that I really want to deal with. So let's now deal with 1 Samuel 16, and we're going to deal with 16 to 12. So we're dealing with Ruddy, right? So we're going to go to 1 Samuel 16, and we're going to read from 6 to 12. And it came to pass that when they were come, that he looked on Eliab, and said, surely the Lord's anointed is before him. But the Lord said unto Samuel, look not on his countenance, or on the height of his stature, because I have refused him. For the Lord seeth not as a man seeth, for man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh on the heart. Right, so basically, to set the story up, Saul disobeyed the first Israelite king. He disobeyed God. And the Lord, he condemned Saul. And Saul started to lose his power, right? The devil came into Saul because of his disobedience, right? So Samuel is now having conversations with the Lord, right? So, and it came to pass when they were come that he looked on Eliab and said, surely the Lord's anointed is before him. But the Lord said unto Samuel, look not on his countenance and his outward appearance, his look, right? Or on the height, or his height. These days, the black woman, she now wants, she wants a six pack, right? She wants a action man who's over 6 foot tall, 6'3", right? Because she's got to wear heels. Apparently the black woman has to wear heels, and when she wears heels she's like 6 foot. So she wants a man that's 6'3", because 6 foot is now short, apparently, according to the black woman.
Why'd you end up popping his?
The height. It was just kind of like
Oh
a
my
height thing
God.
for me.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I was
This average height though. I'm sure as well.
it was the height, and then
height, and
You're handsome, but just the height.
Golly, come on, bro.
If I didn't have to choose three people, I wouldn't have fought.
So what you want, like 6'4", 6'5"?
Not necessarily, just someone taller than me
How tall are you though?
with heels.
Okay, so let's quantify this, right? Because a lot of you women in the Western state of mind, right, regardless to where you live, right, because Western values and Western culture has now spread throughout the whole world, right? So a lot of you women that are in that modern woman thinking, right? Here's the scriptures. So let's first go to Sirah 12, and we're going to read from 1 to 7. When thou do good, know to whom thou doest it, so shall thou be thanked for thy benefits. Do good to the godly man, and thou shalt find a recompense. And if not from him, yet from the Most High. So who do you do good to? A godly man. Always a godly man. There can no good come to him that is always occupied in evil, nor to him that giveth no alms. Right? 4. Give to the godly man and help not a sinner. Right? So your love and your money and your help and your commitment should be to a godly man. Let's read it again. When thou wilt do good, know to whom thou doest it, so shall thou be thanked for thy benefits. Because if you do good to a godly man, you will get benefits from God. Do good to the godly man, and thou shalt find a recompense. So which man should you be looking for, black woman? You should be looking for a godly man. Do good to the godly man, and thou shalt find a recompense, and if not from him, yet from the Most High. Right? You get a recompense from the Most High. There can no good come to him that is always occupied in evil. If you are doing good to a man that is tattooed up to his eyeballs, who is a whoremonger, who is an absolute lowlife, no good can come out of it. Nor to him that is giving no alms, a man that is not generous, right? He spends his money on weed, and spends his money on whoredom. Give to the godly man. You give your time, money, and energy to a godly man, and help not a sinner. You don't help a sinner, a lowlife, a bad boy, because I know a lot of you women, you love the bad boys. A godly man comes along, and you treat that godly man like trash. But a bad boy comes along, a man who's occupied in evil, tattooed all the way up to his eyeballs, and you treat him as if like he's very special. Oh, I see a connection. Oh, I see a spark. I found a spark. All of a sudden you found a connection and found a spark, even though this man is a lowlife, right? Now, let's go to another scripture, because the Bible talks about a godly man. So let's go to Sirach. So let's go to Sirach 37:12. But be continually with a godly man. So when you're looking for a partner, you're looking for a husband. Let me put it that way, husband, because there's no partner in the Bible. It's husband, a companion. When you are looking for a head, a leader, a husband, it says, be continually with a godly man, whom thou knowest to keep the commandments of the Lord, whose mind is according to thy mind. You need to be keeping the commandments too. And will sorrow with thee. This man is not a hot-headed idiot. He's not going to beat you up when he's angry and he gets fed up with you, fed up with your mouth. It says, whose mind is according to thy mind, and will sorrow with thee. So this is not an idiot. You're dealing with a man who is sympathetic, who has empathy, and who truly loves you. If thou shalt miscarry, if you can't even have his children and you keep miscarrying the children, he's still going to be there saying, I love you regardless. I'm going to stay regardless. That's the man you should be thinking of. You should be thinking highly of, not some idiot that you just met on a blind date, or you meet some idiot in a pub or in a nightclub, which is even worse. And then you go, oh, this is my intended. This is my husband. No, this is not your man. This is not the godly man that the Lord will have for your life, right? Now let's now go somewhere else. Let's go to Matthew 16, and we're going to read 24 to 27. Now, a lot of you sisters, you are very, very, very mean. Very mean. Right? You see a good guy coming along and you go, oh, well, I'm bored. Some of you marry good guys. You said you want a man that loves the Lord. You marry a man that loves the Lord. He might be a so-called Christian, right? And you don't even want to follow him. You might marry a man and the man realizes that Christianity is false. And he now realizes he's woken up and he realizes that he's an Israelite. And instead of bearing with this, your husband, right? Your husband, instead of bearing with him and praying and asking the Lord to give you the spirit to follow him, right? And to give you the same spirit, what your instincts is, I'm going to end this because this is not what I want, right? This is what a lot of you women do. So let's go to Matthew 16, and we're going to read from 24 to 27. Then said Jesus unto his disciples, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. So this is very profound. Jesus is saying, he said to his 12 disciples, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself. So is it what you really want? Is it Oh, he must be a 6'2" man, and he must be muscular, and he must have a big house and a big car and a big business and a 6-figure income. No, the Bible says, let him deny himself. You got to deny your what you want personally. You might covet the things of this world, but you got to deny yourself. You got to deny your flesh. Your flesh might want to have sex with all the women in the world, but you got to deny yourself and take up his cross, right? So you got to take up your cross. When you follow Christ, you got to take up the consequences of following Christ. You got to bear that. That is the cross that you have to bear, right? Having things your way all the time and not denying yourself, and understand that love is about sacrifice, that's not denying yourself, right? That's someone that lives in a rich country and is spoilt, right? It says, take up his cross. The consequences of following the truth can be very, very, very dangerous. And follow me. So all of these consequences come as a result of following Christ. You're not going to have the super good life. A lot of men put their lives at risk because they follow Christ. Christ means following the truth, right? 25, but whosoever will save his life shall lose it. And whoever will lose his life for my sake will find it. So if you say, well, I just don't want to do it. I just want to go to church and pretend, because I don't like all this Israelite stuff. It's not cool. It makes me look stupid. It doesn't make me look nice in the eyes of the world. The Lord is saying, but whosoever will save his life, you want to save your life. You don't want to do the things that the Lord will have you do. He says, you shall lose it. You shall lose it. And whosoever will lose his life for my sake shall find it. Right? If you deny yourself and you accept the consequences of following Christ, is that you're going to be persecuted. Right? You will find it. The Lord will give you a reward. Right, let's jump back on 1 Samuel 16, and we're reading from 6 to 12. So 7, but the Lord said unto Samuel, look not on his countenance or on his height or his stature, because I have refused him. So Samuel was going, he got to be the guy, because he's tall enough, he looks good. And the Lord said, I have refused him, for the Lord see it not as a man see it. The Lord doesn't see things the way how we see them. Let's go back again. So 7, but the Lord said unto Samuel, look not on the countenance. The Lord doesn't operate like that. Or unto the height. The Lord is not bothered about people's heights, because we're all going to get our heights in the kingdom. We're all going to be huge in the kingdom. Those of us that make it into the kingdom. Because I have refused him. The Lord has refused him. He doesn't look at the same way we look at other people. We go, oh, she's horny, man. She's sexy, man. Look at those breasts. Look at those breasts. Yeah. That's why she's showing them to you, because she's a whore. I have refused him, for the Lord see it not as a man see it. For the man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh on the heart. The Lord looks at the heart of a man. The Lord is not in the business of looking at the outward appearance. He's more in the business of looking at someone's spirit and where they're at. Right, let's continue. Then Jesse called Abidon and made him pass before Samuel, and he said, neither hath the Lord chosen this. Then Jesse made Shammah to pass by, and he said, neither hath the Lord chosen this. Again Jesse made 7 of his sons to pass before Samuel, and Samuel said unto Jesse, the Lord had not chosen these. And Samuel said unto Jesse, are here all thy children? Is this all your children? And he said, there remaineth yet the youngest, and behold, he keepeth the sheep. And Samuel said unto Jesse, send and fetch him for me. Will not sit down till he come hither. And he sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy. So here's a bit. So he was ruddy, and withal of a beautiful countenance. So he was ruddy, but he looked nice, right? He was ruddy, he looked nice. But goodly to look to. And goodly to look. See, it doesn't mean because you're good looking, it means that you're bad, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that, right? And he sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy and withal a beautiful countenance and goodly to look to. And the Lord said, arise, anoint him, for this is he. Now, ruddy just goes into a beautiful countenance. That's all it really means, really. It just means that you have no blemishes, right? You just look good. You know, David, look, he was young. He was tending the sheep. So he had that young, beautiful skin, right? That blemish-free skin, right? So let's buttress the point. So let's go to 1 Samuel 17:42. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth. So he was just young, and he was but a youth, and ruddy, and of a fair countenance. Right? So let's read it again. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth. Right? So he was young. Right? He looked good. He looked very young. When you're young, you look good. Right? And ruddy. He was ruddy because he was handsome. He had no blemishes. And of a fair countenance. He looked good. He was a good looking man. Right? Skin wise, he was a really good looking man. Right? Right? So let's go to Chronicles. So let's go to 2 Chronicles 1, reading 1. And Solomon, the son of David, was strengthened in his kingdom, and the Lord is his God was with him, and magnified him exceedingly. Right, so let's move on to 2 Chronicles 1, reading from 6 to 12. And Solomon went up thither to the brazen altar before the Lord, which was at the tabernacle of the congregation, and offered 1,000 burnt offerings upon it. And in that night did God appear unto Solomon, and said unto him, ask what I shall give thee. And Solomon said unto God, thou hast showed great mercy unto David my father, and hast made me to reign in his stead. Now, O Lord God, let thy promise unto David my father be established, for thou hast made me king over a people like the dust of the earth in the multitude. Give me more wisdom and knowledge, that I may go out and come in before his people. But who can judge this thy people that is great? And the Lord said to Solomon, because this was in thine heart not asked riches and wealth or honor, nor the life of thine enemies, neither yet hast asked long life, but hast asked wisdom and knowledge for thyself, that thou mayest judge my people, over whom I have made thee king. Wisdom and knowledge is granted unto thee. I will give thee riches and wealth and honor, such as none of the kings have had that had before thee, neither shall there be any thee after thee have the like. Right? So the point I'm trying to make from that is that, and Solomon went up thither to the brazen altar before the Lord, which was at the tabernacle of the congregation, offered 1,000 burnt offerings upon it. In the night did God appear unto Solomon, and said unto him, ask what I shall give thee. And Solomon said unto God, that thou show it great mercy unto David my father, hast made me to reign in his seed. And now, O Lord, let thy promise unto David my father be established, for thou hast made me king over a people like the dust of the earth in the multitude. Right. So David was a good king. That's the point I'm trying to make, right? And Solomon was just praising his father for all the good things that he had done. So I suppose the continuation of that story was David compared to Saul was a brilliant king, and Saul was a lousy king, right? Now, just to explain the point, David was ruddy, right? He was ruddy, and his son Solomon was good looking. He was black, right? Now, we know David was a black man, and he had Bathsheba would have been a black woman too, right? So we know that Solomon was black and David was ruddy, right? So when we compare the both, we can see a correlation between black and ruddy, right? But let's continue. So Bathsheba was a daughter of Zion. She would have been a Negro woman, right? An Israelite woman, a black woman. And David, so basically he had an affair behind Uriah's back. Uriah used to work for King David, and he had an affair with his wife. Now it's a big long story, but Uriah was sent to die, and King David took Bathsheba as his wife, right? So she became his wife. Well, obviously he was having sex with her, so that was his wife, right? And he had more children with her, right? Solomon being one of the children that he had with Bathsheba. So Solomon was black. David was ruddy. His wife was black, right? So now you can do the correlation. So we're reading Songs of Solomon 1 and we're reading from 5 to 6. I am black, but comely, O ye daughters of Jerusalem, as the tents of Kedar, as the curtains of Solomon. So this is going back into color, right? So it says, I am black, but comely. So Solomon was a black man. O ye daughters of Jerusalem, as the tents of Kedar, as the curtains of Solomon. So Kedar goes into, the tents of Kedar goes into the sons of Ishmael. Right, so it goes into the Arabs, right? So it says, I am black but comely, O ye daughters of Jerusalem, as the tents of Kedar, as the curtains of Solomon. So Kedar just means dark, right? Just means black, right? So Kedar was the second son of Ishmael. So that was Abraham. That was Abraham's son. Ishmael was Abraham's son via Hagar, right? So his children would have been dark skin, right? So it says house of dark or house of black. So it's comparing Solomon with being the same color, black and comely, as Kedar. So in case you didn't know, Abraham was a black man. Abraham is one of our forefathers, is the Israelite forefathers. So you got Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, all black men, right? And so therefore his children, Abraham's children via Hagar, would have been dark skin or black, right? So the original Ishmaelites were dark skin, right? They didn't look like the Ishmaelites today, right? They look way darker than that, right? So that's a bit of history for you. Okay, just to dissect the verse a little bit more, it says, I am black, but comely, all ye daughters of Jerusalem. Now, daughters of Jerusalem goes into the house of Israel or the children of Israel. Because sometimes the Lord would associate Israel as being his wife, right? A lot of the times he associates Israel as being his wife. So sometimes you will see the daughters of Zion, depends on how it's used, and it really just means his wife. It just means the house of Israel, the children of Israel, right? So in this context, it's talking about I am black but comely, black but handsome, O ye daughters of Jerusalem, meaning the children of Israel, as the tents of Kedar, meaning dark-skinned people, black people, as the curtains of Solomon, right? So it's just all it is substantiating that Solomon was a black man. That's all it is. Okay, so let's move on from that and let's go to Lamentations. So let's go to Lamentation 4. Lamentations 4. So we're just going to go through a few color scriptures, right, to prove that the Israelites were black. Because one of the things that the apologetics do is that they say that Israel was ruddy. Right, meaning, or the key, like Christ was ruddy and the prophets were ruddy, David was ruddy, right? Meaning that they were not black, they were red, right? So so these scriptures prove that Israel was black, right, or is black. So Lamentations 4, reading from 7 to 8. Lamentations 4, reading from 7 to 8. Her Nazarites were purer than snow. They were whiter than milk. They were more ruddy in body than rubies. Their polishing was of sapphire. Their visage is blacker than cold. Their visage is blacker than a cold. Right? So when it says their visage is blacker than cold, so we understand that ruddy doesn't really mean red, right? Because it's literally saying that their visage, the way they look is black. Right, it says blacker than cold, meaning they're black people, right? But the first one says that they're ruddy and pure. So let's read it again. And her Nazarites were purer than snow. They were whiter than milk, right? So they were whiter than milk. They were more ruddy in body than rubies. So it goes into pure. So let's go up to, let's read from 4. So we're going to read from 4. So we're reading Lamentations 4:4. The tongue of the suckling child cleaveth to the roof of his mouth for thirst. The young children ask bread, and no man breaketh it unto them. I think this was during the Babylonian captivity. Let me just have a look. I believe this was during the Babylonian captivity. But yeah, let's carry on. So it says, so we're reading Lamentations 4, and we're going to read from, we'll read from 4. The tongue of the suckling child cleaveth to the roof of his mouth for thirst. The young children ask bread, and no man breaketh it unto them. They that did feed delicately are desolate in the streets. They that were brought up in the scarlet embrace dunghills. For the punishment of the iniquity of the daughters of my people is greater than the punishment of the sin of Sodom, that was overthrown as in a moment, and no hands stayed on her. Right, this goes into the daughters of Zion, right? Her Nazarites were purer than snow. They were whiter than milk. They were more ruddy in body than rubies. Their polishing was of sapphire. Right, so this goes into their look. They just look good. They look purer, goes into they were good folks, right? And ruddy goes into a good countenance. You know, they just look good looking people, right? And it goes ruddy in body than rubies, right? So they look great, and they're polishing of sapphire. So polishing goes into they just look like really wonderful people, right? Their visage is blacker than a coal. They are not known in the streets. Their skin cleaveth to their bones. It is withered. It is become like a stick, right? So it's comparing that with the way how they used to look, right? So it's saying, her Nazarites were purer than snow. They were whiter than milk. They were more ruddy in body than rubies. Their polishing was of sapphire. Semicolon. Their visage is blacker than a coal. They are not known in the streets. Their skin cleaveth to their bones. It is withered. It is become like a stick. Right. So this was when they went into, I think it was a famine. You know, they were starving basically. And so they were going through quite a lot. So there was a juxtapose from being, you know, things that were, you know, they look great to looking crap, right? And when black people are going through a lot, right, in terms of sicknesses, we tend to go darker, right? We tend to look darker, right? So that's why it's saying their visage is darker than cold, because, you know, we tend to look darker when we're sick. And they are not known in the streets. They are not known in the streets. Their skin cleaveth to their bones. So this is just juxtaposed to how good they looked. They were quite skinny, and it is withered. It has become like a stick. So they were starving basically, and they just juxtaposed with how they used to look. Right? They don't look great, right? So that's going into that. So let's go to Lamentations 5:10. Our skin was black like an oven because of the terrible famine. So they were going through quite a lot. Okay, so just to give some flavour of Lamentation, it was actually written by Prophet Jeremiah, and it was when the Babylonians invaded Jerusalem, right? So they invaded Jerusalem, and basically the author, which is Jeremiah, is explaining the contrast between how things used to be so good and now things are so terrible, right? Because everybody's quaking in their boots because a foreign nation has now invaded, and Israel is weakened. Israel is weakened, whereas Israel before had nobody could beat us, right? Nobody could beat Israel, and now even Jerusalem is now being invaded, whereas the Assyrians before the Babylonians didn't invade Jerusalem, but the Babylonians invaded Jerusalem, and then everything did a switch up, right? So to give a flavour of a little bit more about what was happening, let's quickly go up to the top. So we're reading Lamentations 5, and we're going to read from 1, and then we'll read down to 10. They're very short verses, so we'll just be quick with it. Remember, O Lord, what is come upon us. Consider and behold our reproach. Our inheritance is turned to strangers, our houses to aliens. We are orphans and fatherless. Our motherless are as widows. We have drunken our water for money, and our wood is sold unto us. Our necks are under persecution. We labour and have no rest. We have given the hand to the Egyptians and to the Assyrians to be satisfied with bread. Our fathers have sinned and are not, and we have borne their iniquities. So Jeremiah is saying our fathers have sinned, and we are now bearing their shame, the blunt of the Lord's wrath. Servants have ruled over us. That's the nations, which is the Babylonians, which are the Cushites. The Babylonians were the Cushites, which would be the modern day Ethiopians. So it says, servants have ruled over us. There is none that do it deliver us out of their hand. We get our bread with the peril of our lives because of the sword of the wilderness. Our skin was black like an oven because of the terrible famine. So that kind of gives you an idea about where Jeremiah was going with this. So when he says our skin was black like an oven, he's saying because we're going through so much distress, we were even darker than we normally are. So it says our skin is black like an oven because of the terrible famine. And what I said before is that when black people are starving or going through suffering with diseases or whatever, we tend to turn darker, right? Especially famines and stuff like that. We tend to go darker, right? So it says our skin was black like an oven because of the terrible famine. Right? Whereas before it associated us as being healthy, right, where it talks about us looking like let's go back to 7 where it says the Nazarites were purer than snow, meaning literally just pure. They were whiter than milk, so that goes into being they look good. They were pure before the Most High and they look good. They were more ruddy in body than rubies, so that goes into they were very good looking, healthy people. Their polishing was of sapphire, so that is contrast to us being in this downward position of famine and being oppressed by the Babylonians. So where it talks about polishing was of sapphire, it goes into we went from being a very healthy, strong, powerful people to this low level. So that's what the prophet Jeremiah is getting at in Lamentations. So let's go to Esther in the Apocrypha, and we're going to go to the book of Esther, and we're going to read 15:5. Here, ready, go. And she was ruddy through the perfection of her beauty. Right, so ruddy is defined there. All right, so if you want to know the definition of ruddy, it just means the perfection of beauty. That's all it means, right? It's it's like the good skin. It is good looking. It is the glowy skin, youthful skin. It is, you have a really wonderful complexion. That kind of, it's all of those things. So it says, and she was ruddy through the perfection of her beauty, and her countenance was cheerful and very amiable. She was just a happy person, right? And her heart was in anguish for fear. But her heart was in anguish for fear. But still, she was very fearful, right? But what we want to take from that is that she was ruddy through the perfection of her beauty. So that's really what ruddy means. It's the perfection of beauty, right? So let's now go to Esther in the regular Bible. So we're going to go to Esther 2:7. So we're going to Esther 2:7. And he brought up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother, and the maid was fair and beautiful. Right, so she was fair and beautiful, whom Mordecai, when her mother and father were dead, took for his own daughter. Right, so let's read it again. And she brought up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother, and the maid was fair and beautiful. She was fair and beautiful. She had perfection of beauty. She was a very good-looking woman. Whom Mordecai, when her father and mother were dead, took for his own daughter. So he raised her as his very own daughter. So let's skip down to 17. So we're going to skip down to 17. And the king loved Esther above all the women. So Esther married this Persian, whose name was King Ahasuerus. Right, so that was his name. So his name was King Ahasuerus, and he was the Persian and Media king, right? And here's wife, I think his name was Vashti, or Vashti. Vashti, she offended him, right? She usurped his authority, and then he was looking for another wife, right? So Esther ended up being his other wife, right? So we're reading 17 again. So reading 17. And the king loved Esther above all the women, and obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown upon her head and made her the queen instead of Vashti. Right? So this gives you a flavor of who Esther was, right? So she was a really, really wonderful character. But if we read 7 again, it says that she was neither father nor mother, and she was a maid, and she was fair and beautiful. And when we read the Apocrypha, let's go back to the Apocrypha, it says that she was ruddy through the perfection of her beauty. So it just goes into beauty. And her countenance was cheerful and very amiable, and her heart was in anguish for fair. So what does ruddy mean? It doesn't mean red. It just means perfection of beauty. That's all it means. Right, that is really all it means. Right, the Bible says precept upon precept, line upon line, here a little, there a little. That's how we understand the Bible. Brothers and sisters, I hope you were edified. Shalom.